In a world of podcasts, one rises in the night to destroy them all. The elder god in an ocean of noise, the Cthulhu of the airwaves. This is Spoiler Country.
Welcome back to Spoiler Country. I'm Kenric. As always, today it's going to be really cool because Image is one of my favorite companies. I love the big two. I love the big two when I was a kid, but as I've gotten older, I'm going to be 47 next week. So as I've gotten quite a bit older, I kind of like those more complete story arcs, those more complete stories, and those creator-owned stuff that you get with Image and other companies. Right now is a really cool story going on, and we have the writer on, Chris Condon. I say that right? Awesome.
Correct.
I always want to make sure I say your name right, and I really appreciate you coming on. You are in the midst of writing that Texas Blood.
Correct.
And I read the first arc. I read the trade paperback. I actually, you know what's cool, Chris? I was able to check it out at my local library.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's awesome. That's amazing to hear.
I kind of feel like you made it when you can check your stuff out at the local library. And it's not like a copy that you brought down to them that they, whoever is their purchaser went and found that book and said, I want this at our library, you know?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's validation right there.
Right.
You know? I mean, I literally did bring down a copy of it to my local library, my hometown library that I grew up with, because I wanted to have my book in my local library. And they
in Seattle, Washington, they got your book.
Well, that's amazing to hear. That's really, really cool. I mean, like, libraries are really important to me growing up. So just hearing that it's in a library. I also, Julio Anta, who writes Home, sent me a picture from the Strand in Manhattan, which is one of these gigantic bookstores, and they had us on their best of wall next to
that's cool,
the storyboard of Parasite. And I was like, why are we up there? But it's so cool. But yeah, the local library thing was funny though, because they were like, oh, so it's young adult, and I was like, no. No.
Well, I read it. I didn't know what I was going into it blind, which I love to do with books, especially a good comic book. I love the fact it felt like an amalgamation of a Coen Brothers movie like Blood Simple and No Country for Old Men, mixed in with Lone Star with Matthew McConaughey and Sam Cooper. Have you ever watched that movie?
Yeah, John Sayles. Yeah,
and that's what when I was halfway through it, I was like, one, if this is made into a movie, and I know that you try to pitch it as a script, as a movie.
Yeah,
and you even did did you produce a little skit out of it to kind of give that first thing? Did that come to light, or did you decide to?
No. So what happened actually was the first issue was actually the short film that we were trying to make to kickstart the feature, which would have been issues 2 through 6.
So it's a storyboard of the short film.
Well, we only even got to concept art, and Jacob actually did the concept art for me, so that's how we got involved. Jacob and I.
Yeah.
Because I've always been a comic reader, and I was loving the stuff that he was doing in the back of Kill or Be Killed. He was illustrating the essays.
That's where that's from. I knew I recognized that art.
Yeah.
Kill or Be Killed was.
Yeah. No, Kill or Be Killed was awesome. Yeah, and I was loving that book when it was coming out, and I was loving Jacob's stuff, and so I just reached out to him on his DeviantArt page. We didn't know each other. I mean, we still haven't met each other. He's in the UK. But yeah, I just reached out to him. I was like, hey, I wrote this script. I'm trying to get it made. It's hard trying to get funding together for a short film unless you're self-funding. Maybe you might want to do some concept art. Help me pitch it. And he read the script. He liked it a lot. And the script really didn't change much at all. So it pretty much has been the same throughout. But yeah, the character of Joe Bob just became a favorite of mine to write. And that's kind of how he became the sort of the focus of the story in a lot of ways. And, it's funny you mentioned, Lone Star and the Coen Brothers, which obviously, I mean, that's like an amazing compliment to hear that you're lumping him into it.
Your beats are very similar. The beats that you have are very similar to what the Coen Brothers would do. And Like the whole casserole dish. I heard on another interview that you were laughing because people always bring up the casserole dish to you.
They do, yeah.
Such a Coen Brothers move.
Well, it was, yeah. I mean, I'm a big Coen Brothers fan, so I mean, that's really cool here, and it's probably just through osmosis that I sort of picked this stuff up. But
Sure.
I also think a lot of it came from Jim Thompson novels. If you haven't read any Jim Thompson, he wrote like Pop 1280 and The Killer Inside Me and all these other great, dark, crime / just awful people stories. So, a lot of it came from that, and also just absorbing from the people I knew from West Texas and spending a little bit of time in West Texas. But yeah, and in issues 7 through 12 now, which we're working on, and I guess it's going to spill over a little bit into 13, but it's a little bit of a different beast. We're melding it with a few other influences that I have, like 70s TV movies, these horror tinged TV movies, which is a little bit of what we're doing, but obviously still with that hard edged pulpy thing we were doing in the first arc. So
Salem's Lot was a miniseries on TV, and it scared the crap out of me.
Oh, I love Salem's Lot. I should have said to start with, happy birthday next week.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, Salem's Lot. I mean, I'm a big King fan, and so you'll definitely in the next arc, especially. But I feel like even in the first arc, you'll get a little bit of that sort of Stephen King vibe.
Yeah,
just the fact that it takes place in this fictional place. He sort of is just a huge influence on me. And I mean that Salem's Lot Tobe miniseries is one of my favorites. I mean it's long, but I love it. I mean, it sails by, and also just, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Fantastic.
Another great one.
I think I would argue that is the best. That is the greatest horror movie of all time.
It's definitely. It's surreal. So when you watch it, it gets super. Yeah, it's super scary.
Yeah, it like eats into you when you watch it, which is why I think it's so effective.
Right.
It just like eats away at you until you're just staring at the screen going, what am I watching? Which makes it great.
Don't turn it off.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of those movies that, you did this, like I was a kid and I'd be like, blanket, but looking just through that slit but I don't want to see it. Oh yeah.
Well, my mom, when I was a kid, she would just tell us about these movies. And Texas Chainsaw, she just told us it was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life, which of course me and my brother were like, we have to see it now.
I get that.
But
my mom was super religious, so it was always no. So always had to be at a friend's house, or me and my brother had to sneak. We had, like, when I was a kid, we had cable, and it had the PG key. And I don't know if you might be too. I don't know how old you are, so I'm not going to assume nothing.
I'm 30.
Okay, so you might actually be a little too young for this. So in the 80s, they had a PG key where your parents could tell the cable company, "Hey, I want to lock out my kids from watching anything rated PG or above," right? Even though they wouldn't lock out NR, which was way worse than rated R. But so get this key, and it would literally it's a box. And your cable went in, your cable came out, and when you click that key, boom, it turned off all the anything PG and above. Or actually, I think it would allow PG and below. So my parents would put that on the top of their dresser, and they go to bed, and they're both heavy sleepers. So like 11:30 o'clock night, my brother would go up, grab the key, and we'd watch Salem's Lot. We had Showtime, which was really lucky. Like 1981, we'd watch Salem's Lot, Frankenstein, the original Dracula, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Thing, all those things watched that gave me nightmares. Should have never watched those things. It was so bad.
Yeah. I had a similar upbringing though. I mean, my parents were not my parents so much, but my mom was more so like, oh, you can't see rated R movies. At a certain point, like when I was like 13, maybe, she did start to filter. She said, okay, you can watch these, and she rented The Exorcist for us and like a couple other things.
Yeah.
But it was like at a certain point, like I had friends who were watching The Exorcist much younger than me. And I hadn't seen that, but I had seen other things before that. But I remember very early on, my brother and I stayed up late and we snuck downstairs and we watched the original Phantom of the Opera. with Lon Chaney.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I never had seen a silent movie before. And it was the most terrifying thing to me. The most terrifying thing to me was even Lon Chaney walking through the sewers under the Paris Opera House.
Yeah.
But he uses this pipe. So nobody knows that he's coming, but you just see this pipe coming.
Right.
I was maybe like 5 watching this, and it terrified me.
Oh, yeah.
This black and white, undercranked. It was just like this surreal thing to watch.
Yeah.
It really changed my life.
The original Dracula did that for me. For some reason, my mom didn't care about that one, which is really odd because she, like anything. I mean, when we rented The Goonies in 1980, when did that come out? 87? I think it was 1988. It was out on video. We rented The Goonies at our local video store, and the scene where Chunk breaks the statue of David and they're trying to put his genitalia back on, they put it on upside down. She like told my dad, Pat, turn it off. And I was like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
I already watched it in the theater with my friends, so it wasn't that big a deal, but she was very much a stickler. But for some reason, she was okay with me watching the original Frankenstein and Dracula and the Wolfman and all that kind of stuff, which was really odd. But the original Dracula really got me. I was like, oh, but I really loved it. You know what I mean? I wanted to watch it like a million times.
Yeah. Well, that one's really effective, I think, also because it doesn't have music that was before they were doing a full orchestra. So the silence really gets to you too, because you're not used to it. If you're watching movies in the 80s, you're used to just a full on score all the time. And this was just a silent movie aside from the title track, which was, I think, what was it? The Swan Lake.
Yeah. Oh, really?
That was the Universal movies, the Universal monster movies. That was like their theme song. All of them had that. All of them had Swan Lake.
Oh, I don't think I realized that. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And I've watched all those. I've gone back and watched them a bunch of times. The Wolfman's pretty good.
Wolfman's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Lon Chaney is really good. Or is that Lon Chaney that's in that, or Lon Chaney?
It's Lon Chaney Jr. Yeah.
He's a big guy.
Yeah.
He is not tiny. I was like, holy shit, that's a big dude.
Yeah. I always think it's funny, the transformation in that movie where he just sits in the chair and it just slowly, they just add on makeup.
Yep. They did a pretty good job though when you think about the time frame.
Oh, Jack Pierce was the makeup artist. He's fantastic. He's one of the greatest. I think. He did all those guys.
When did you figure out, because you're a movie buff, obviously, when did you figure out that you wanted to write a screenplay, and how did you fall on Texas Blood? I think you called it something else at the beginning, because you're a Jersey boy writing about Texas. Yeah. I mean, talk about
Well, so there is a sort of mystique about Texas, especially if you grew up where I grew up, but there's something about it. And, if you watch movies about it and you visit it and, you sort of absorb this, it feels like the final frontier of America is there,
a different
things that happen there don't happen anywhere else, it seems. The vistas there are unlike anywhere else, really, which is, I guess, true across the American West, really. But yeah, there's just something about it, the characters, the way people talk. I don't know, there's something about the place. And so that sort of, attracted me to it. But yeah, I figured out that I wanted to work in entertainment in some capacity very early on. My uncle was an artist. He was a painter. He was a fine art painter,
cool.
He was oil painter. And so I was already drawing, and I already did that kind of stuff. I was drawing comics myself very early on. And I remember in the second grade, I literally tried to launch my own remake of Titanic.
That's awesome.
I was obsessed with the Titanic. I was planning on how I was going to make the deck. I had already here's like how my mind was already working in the second grade. I had already figured out that we would build just the top of the deck, and we would shoot wides of a miniature, and then I would build the whole deck, and I had the whole thing planned out, and the only thing I couldn't figure, I was casting people on the schoolyard. I was saying, would you be in my movie? Will you be my Jack? Will you be my Rose? I was like casting the whole movie, and then the only thing I couldn't figure out was how I was going to make working smokestacks, and I dropped the whole thing.
That's awesome.
Figure out how to get smoke to come out of the smokestacks. I just couldn't figure it out.
Too bad no one gave you dry ice.
Nobody gave me dry. I might not have known it existed, But yeah, from very early on, I wanted to do movies, comics, art, and general writing.
Yeah.
I wrote a book that was in my local library. I actually tried to find it somewhat recently, and I couldn't find it. I don't know where it went to. They had other people that were in my grade.
Right.
They had like a little summer program where you wrote and drew a book, like a kid's book. And I'd done that when I was maybe 6 or 7. Right. And it was called The Great Fishing Adventure. And it was about a kid who was absorbed into a book.
Oh, that's awesome.
I never fished in my life. I don't know why I wrote about a fishing adventure, but you know, it was right there. You know, I was working on, you know, I was writing. I was always writing. I was always creating. That was always my thing. So this is really the culmination of literally my entire life. The fact that now I have an Image Comics published book to my name. So it's pretty cool. The fact that it's not a movie isn't too much of a burn for me because I love comics so much. It
can't be too much.
It's a fair trade.
Working with a wonderful artist, you got a wonderful company behind you. It's a pretty good, and plus you can dive so much more into that world than you ever can with just a straight movie.
You know, I think we're allowed to. The thing that I like to kind of say about it is that with comics, it's essentially a one-to-one relationship with the reader. You know, you are you're talking directly to the reader,
right?
Whereas with a movie, it's the screenwriter, the director, unless if the screenwriter is the director. But even then, you got to go through a producer. You got to go through producers. Most likely, you have to, you have a cinematographer who adds their lens to it, literally. So there's all these different hats in the ring, and it's an amazing process. I'm not knocking the process, but you're getting a more direct conduit in comics.
Right. Well, plus the visuals kind of add to that as well. Like M. Night Shyamalan, right? He literally draws a storyboard like a comic and then recreates those shots, verbatim. So, I mean, really, you're doing all the work except for the thing in a lot of ways, and you're playing for who are the people you want, how you want them to look, and how you want them to, what you want them to say. It's perfect every time. I love it. I think it's great. The book was really a lot of fun, Chris. I mean, you don't get a lot of books that deal with the kind of emotions that you're going through. I can understand Randy. I liked how you kind of kept Travis very much more of a mystery and on the kind of person that he was. Like, you have an understanding that he was an asshole in a lot of ways, but you don't know why and you don't know how. You just know that they didn't what's the word, endear themselves to their community.
Yeah, exactly.
You do understand, and he took off and didn't want to come back, but his brother's death made him come back. Yeah, I mean, I understand if people didn't like that, and I know that there were certain people that didn't like that, but for me that it works, and that's the kind of stuff that I enjoy. And also, just I feel like the only important thing is that you need to know that Randy is fucked up because of this. That's really the only thing that you need to know. You're building a world, and you're showing what this community was like, and what you can expect through these experiences. And in life, that's how life works. That's why it reminded me so much of the Coens. You don't get everything in life. It's that way. You don't understand. You meet people. They have this weird fucked up thing in their life. It is. They're messed up, but there's a whole reason behind it. But you don't know everything. You just know, his parents were abusive, but you don't know the extent. That's how life works. So I liked how you did that. I thought it was written really brilliantly in that respect.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely. I definitely worked out some of my own darker times through that character as well. Just dealing with, drinking and depression and a lot of other things, and, not getting along with my brother and my dad and like a whole lot of things, just kind of like bubbling up and just kind of filtered it all through that.
Well,
I definitely felt like it was sort of a therapy session.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask, you have Joe Bob, you have Kuttner, you have Randy and Travis, and you have all these characters that Sarah and Marcia, and you've all these characters ready to go. And I know how writing works. What character do you think kind of you closely resemble and kind of working through some of your own issues when it comes to that?
It's funny because it's like the cliche answer is all of them, and I really do think that that's true.
Sure, it's an amount of everything, but you always have one that you're a little closer with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably in a lot of ways, Joe Bob, and I think that kind of comes through in how my parents raised me.
Yeah, I like it.
And also maybe what I strive to be, is sort of just like a good guy. I don't know if I am, but I try to be. So probably him. There's definitely, like I said, I mean, I'm only 30, but like there was a period in my 20s where I was very much Randy. You know, I was just like fucking my own shit up constantly.
Yeah.
I don't mean to keep cursing. Sorry.
Fine.
Cool. Yeah. All right. But like, I was just like my own worst enemy most of the time. But then, I mean, also I was Marsha, you know, because I had a girlfriend who, she wasn't maybe the best thing for me. And I just tried to be there for her. And even when it was against my own, well-being. And that came across in her and like all these other characters. So it really is sort of an amalgamation of just everybody being a part of you as a writer. And I think probably Jacob does that as well when he's drawing them.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like, I don't want to say that I'm the director, but I definitely, when I write a script, I sort of direct the script. So I have angles in it. I have all emotions in it. But really what it comes down to is I feel like if I'm the director, then Jacob is really the artist. He's the artist, but he's also the actor.
Right.
So he's bringing all these emotions to life. And he's bringing the scenery to life. And he is really the mise en scène of the whole thing.
Right.
So it's like that to me is that's what where our partnership is really where we thrive. Is just that I like to say that I write once, he rewrites, then we rewrite it again when we kind of meet back.
Right.
And I really truly believe that. But yeah, I think I got off topic there. But anyway, hope I answered your question.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. When I know that I haven't read 7 and 8 yet.
Gotcha. It is out. 8 just came out today. Actually,
we're going back to like 1981, and we're going to get some of that story based on Joe Bob's flashback with the sheriff during his time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Was that his brother?
So it is Sam, the sheriff's brother, that does him in, and we'll learn a little bit more about that. And that doesn't happen in this arc, but we get to know Sam more in this arc.
Right.
We'll find out a little bit more in the next arc after this.
Is crazy.
Sorry, what was that?
The art during the dream sequence is crazy. And that whole thing coming in behind him in the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, for a second, I thought we were going to take like a supernatural twist, you know, because it looked like a zombie, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love dreams. Like dreams are always a big part of whatever I create. I just think that there's something in them that is, I love the surreal in general. I grew up loving Terry Gilliam and, all these, great surrealists, Buñuel and Dali, all these great surrealists. I feel like there's so much in them because you can do the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
And have it make a sort of sense.
Yeah. It showed that on TV.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, kind of in a way we're doing sort of the Twin Peaks thing as well. But yeah, it's a way to get into the psyche of whoever your character is that you're dealing with. And I mean, we see a little bit more of the dream stuff with Joe Bob. That's sort of his, like, the place he returns to is this campfire, in his dreams. Why? Maybe we'll find out.
Yeah, maybe.
But I mean, that was always in there from the script. Just I liked the idea of this. We go back, and that's kind of how we find out a little bit more about the county and about the sheriff, Sheriff Joe Bob.
Yeah.
But also this other character who, like you said, we're fleshing out now in 7 and 8. Yeah, I mean, and just it's kind of fun for me in the new story arc. We bounce between 2021 and 1981, so we're going 40 years back in time, flashing back and forth.
That's
it's kind of fun.
Hard skill set to do, dude.
So far it seems people like it. So
it's hard because I'm in the process of writing something out for myself, and I'm by no means a professional writer. And I was talking to somebody, and he's like, "Man, you should really think about doing this and using flashbacks to get to this point." And I was like, "Wow, that's a really good idea." And I start working on it. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do this to make it make sense or to have it come forward. So I'm like, oh, maybe that's just not blocks. Maybe I should stick to the straightforward.
My sort of my thing with that is that I just sort of think you got to follow your intuition.
Yeah.
I don't outline too much when I write. I have like a very rough outline where like I know where I want to get to.
Right.
I'm actually working on a short story right now, and I was just texting a friend about it because I know where I need to get to, but I'm like at the other side of the hump and I can't get over it. And I just need to get over it. And I'm trying to figure out how do I get there.
Right.
So, and that's the thing where intuition comes in. And, I mean, I definitely had that with the first arc too. Like, oh, how do I get there? And then you might need to go for a walk, something like that. But it's like, it'll click and it will all make sense. And,
Yeah.
But yeah, the cool thing for me about writing the 1981 2021 stuff is that you're getting to see two very different sheriffs, two very different old sheriffs. How an old sheriff acts in 1981 is not how an old sheriff acts in 2021.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't, I mean, it's just very funny to me to have sort of, who Joe Bob is very different from who Sam is. And just to see that difference and, and and just what made Joe Bob who he is kind of,
Yeah. No, I love it, man. I think you're doing something really cool here that you don't always get in comic books. And the fact, one of my favorite things is I felt like Randy at the end, and we're spoiler country. So if you haven't read volume 1 of Texas Blood, I suggest that you fast forward like 5 seconds, 20 seconds, and then go on. I felt like Randy was in the Twilight Zone. And the fact that at the end he finds out who really killed his brother. Actually, he finds out who really killed his brother, but he's done all this damage, and he's just like, I don't know. I don't know if he was relieved. Like, I don't know if he felt like he was happy that he was still done because they were still kind of the cause of everything. They still kind of helped do all this stuff. Or was he like, shit, I just threw away my whole life? Because he makes the statement, I'm home. I'm, you know what I mean? I'm never leaving, or I'm fine. You know what I mean? I'm never home.
I think that he discovers in the end that's, he is that Texas guy. Like he tried to escape it, but he can't.
Right.
And it literally winds up with him being, eventually caged in jail, like he literally can't escape.
I think I kind of think that he might be your anti-hero protagonist. And then it just turns out that, no, he's just really fucked up like everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, for a while there, I wasn't sure what I needed him to do in order to get to, if people are trying to avoid spoilers, I maybe don't listen to this part of the conversation. But like at one point I was going to have it be even darker, and I was going to have he wakes up with the gun in his hand, and the person who is on the ground shot would have been his girlfriend.
Oh yeah, that
Marcia.
Yeah.
And that would have been sort of a different approach to things, but then I decided on, he kills the guy Fred Plum.
Right, Kuttner.
Yeah, and then we have the whole sort of telltale heart thing with the door scratching and all that.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about Marcia because she comes down there, he answers the door, they have their fight, and then she just goes back to LA. I kind of thought she'd have was there something cut out that you were like, I'm going to have all this happen? Or because that's very true to life as well, right? I liked it. I thought I was going to get a little bit more with her, but I like that you cut it because that does happen, and kind of kept it true. But I'm wondering if you did cut something out that maybe you can give us a little.
Sort of. So the way that I approached it was that issue 4, which has our great Simpsons reference on it. The cover is reference to Mother Simpson, the Great Simpsons episode. I sort of thought of that almost as like Marcia's episode. That was her issue in a way, because we spend a lot of time with her. We're there when she rents the car, and we're there when she's driving down, and then she calls him at the end. And I wanted it to be this sweet moment where she's just trying to offer help.
Right.
And he's just being a dog. He's just being like an animal.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know it. And she's just thinking that he's just having a rough time, and she can come and, pet his hair, kiss him and make everything right.
Right.
Meanwhile, he's got a body in his basement.
Oh.
So basically I didn't have anything larger planned for her aside from I wanted him to kill their relationship.
Yeah.
Because he felt trapped. And that, to me, that was the only important thing. You know, I wanted to establish her as a possible safety net that he just brushes away. So that he's essentially cutting all ties.
Yeah. Again, real life.
So that, to me, was her purpose. And, you know.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have explored, you know, I wish that we had, you know, I sort of feel like I write in a novelistic way anyway, but I wish that we had, like, we could do it forever, you know, and just kind of explore these people and, you know, that story. Because I honestly do think that there is, you know, stuff to explore in there. But, you know, in trying to fit it into 23 or 24 pages, it gets tight. I actually went over a couple times recently. I think I wound up going to 25 or 26 issues on a couple of the issues coming up.
Yeah.
Just because I felt like we needed it.
You're back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind. I mean, it's cool for me. I mean, we have the issue 9 that comes out next month is 36 pages, and it's not that it's, you know, you're getting a crazy amount more story. You're just getting that everything's a little more fleshed out, and then you also get a longer piece of back matter.
Yeah.
Which I felt strongly about the back matter getting in there. And, you know, if you read. So it's not in the trade, but in issues 2 through 6, there's this short story that's serialized through them that Randy had written, and it's not like exactly what's going on in the story, but it's a story about 2 guys who were criminals in El Paso who they come down there and they're sort of they're vagabonds essentially, and they wind up in a shitty situation. They're shot and dad are dying in a well house. Yeah. West Texas. The one guy is dead, the other guy's bleeding out, and he's telling it this story in his mind as he's watching the bats flit about in the sky as the sun is going down, and he's dying, and he's sure the cops are going to find him eventually. But, you know, it's the story that I was trying to tell through that was I wanted to have a sort of analogous thing with what he was doing, which was essentially, you know, just putting himself in a corner that he can't get out of. But in issues 7 through 12, what we're doing is a little different, where it's all we introduced this character named Harlan Eversole, who is essentially his big influence of mine was Kolchak.
Yeah,
Kolchak, the Night Stalker, played by Darren McGavin.
Oh yeah.
Instead of a journalist, he's a PI, which I also love, you know, private investigator. So that's, you know,
dude, that's
easy for me.
I love that stuff, dude. Supernatural stories. The story I'm working on, I'll tell you, and I tell everybody because I figure if I tell everybody, nobody can steal it. It's called Supernatural Baby Detective, and it's about a guy that in his late 50s, 60s, like around the late 1990s, early 2000s, and he's investigating a child kidnapping situation. Okay, and he goes to this place and he dies, and after he dies, he ends up going and this entity comes to him. And I'm going to try to make it very Cthulhu-esque in the main thing. But this entity comes to him saying, no, I need you to keep doing this. I need you to figure out what's going on because I can't come to your world, all this kind of stuff. So he was like, so all this stuff happens. Basically what happens is he is reborn at that moment, right? So the next thing is him coming out the birth canal. Boom. He's a baby. But in his brain, it's just him. He was just born, but all of his knowledge, it's not like it's not like what do you call it? You know, when you die and you come back, you die, you come back. What do they call that? Why is my brain not working?
Reincarnation.
It's not reincarnation, right? No. This is Frank. He's Frank, and he's frustrated because he can't talk because he doesn't have the vocal cords aren't ready, and all of a sudden he's meeting this lady that's supposed to be his mom. He's like, no, my mom died 20 years ago, and but you know, and now she's having to change him, and finally he's able to start talking, and so he has he has to struggle through feelings that he's having with this lady as his mom, and he keeps calling her lady, but she's pissed off. He's, I'm your mother. I'm not, you know, some lady. No, you're a lady. My mom is this person. And and then when he's like 2.5, 3, she starts taking him to the stuff to start investigating, to reinvestigate all the stuff that he was doing because these kidnappings are still happening. So he starts to reinvestigate, and so that's where the supernatural baby detective comes, because he's a baby that's investigating all this stuff.
I love it, and I love the title. Supernatural baby detective. I don't know why I didn't think of that. That's pretty damn funny. I love that.
It's all right there. I'm gonna try to get it done here pretty soon. I mean, I'm still writing through like the second act, trying to just outline it and then get it through. You know, I had a buddy that was like,
second act can be tough.
Yeah,
the second act can be tough.
Yeah, well, now I'm introducing the villain, the villain, and how he got to where he's at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we'll go into this whole thing. And I got all these characters. I got them pretty much fleshed out, but at the same time, dude, it's a lot of work. It's no joke. And so I applaud that you got where you're at because, man.
Well, you know, it's funny because I wrote this one piece of back matter, and then I always reread my scripts before Jake does all the lettering, and I'm looking through and I'm like, wait a minute. Does this all make sense? And I literally had to go and like create a timeline so that I made sure that everything made sense. Because I say that things happen in 1968 and I'm like, do they always happen in 1968 or do I sometimes fudge it and go 1970? You know, it's like, so it's like I had to like figure out, okay, no, it's this person and there was this went and right. You know, so it's like just figuring all that stuff out. But yeah, it's a lot of it's just sort of, I don't know, you sort of just wing it and then eventually it'll just, you know, if it doesn't work, you'll just like chisel it in there, make it fit.
Yeah, exactly. I just realized though, like having a writing partner is great, but then I'm like, I like did this outline. I sent it to my buddy and he was like, oh, I'm going to rewrite it. And in my brain, it exploded. I'm like, no. You can't rewrite everything because nothing is actually done. I mean, I don't, you know what I mean? You might make major changes that I'm not good with.
Yeah.
How about you just let me finish it and then, you know, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the perks of being a solo writer.
Right. So what's
the only person you have to answer to is yourself.
Right. So you have the whole thing that this came out is your detective. Is it a short story? Are you going to hope to turning into like a full-fledged comic book arc like we were getting with Texas Blood, or what is the format?
Well, so this detective is so Eversol, he comes into it, and what the back matter is it's all of his collected investigation material.
Yeah.
For this case. So we're getting as the issues go on and we start learning a little bit more about characters, like there will be a piece of information about that character, about that place or whatever.
Yeah.
Sort of flesh it out. But also, you know, I'm using it as a opportunity to flesh out not only the story arc and the characters, but also the world in which we're building of Ambrose County itself. So there's things that stretch all the way back to the 20s.
I missed this. That it's part of the Ambrose County world.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this is even more exciting because you're building on top of the foundation you already have.
Yeah, and that was the fun thing about doing the first arc the way that we did it was that, you know, we're sort of just establishing in a very small way the county.
Yeah.
And now in this arc, we're blowing it open.
Yeah.
You know, we're really getting into the nitty-gritty of, you know, why, you know, certain things might happen in this county.
So
and
I saw that you said you've already mapped out Joe Bob's life.
Yes.
And I'm curious, is that just so that you can create decisions based on what Joe Bob would make? Or do you plan on showing his death at some point?
Well, I don't want to get into that, even though we're on spoiler country.
Yeah, no, that's totally cool. No, you don't want to. Don't give anything away. Give away.
But yeah, I mean, I know. I wanted to know his entire life because I wanted to know the decisions that, I wanted to get to a point where the reason why he winds up making decisions that he ends up making.
Right.
You know, we start seeing some of that being laid now, and also just knowing where he came from, and you know, in the opening page of issue 8, we have a sort of monologue from him in which he's talking about a talk that he and his brother, which also now introduced the fact that he had a brother growing up, his father had a talk with him about what a good man is.
Right.
You know, and you know, so establishing who his character is and why his brain works the way it does. You know, I wanted to figure out, because to me plot is obviously important, but the really important thing for me is character.
Yeah.
And I really truly believe that I know Joe Bob as a person.
Yeah.
You know, in this, in our story. So, and it's really great that, I mean, people will like, message me and be like, well, ... And I'm like, that's really cool. Cause it's, it's just a really cool thing. I mean, that came from real people that I know in Texas, that's how they talk. Just, well, all right, well, let's figure this out, but yeah, I mean, every time I write a piece of dialogue for him, I have to say it out loud, and I do it in his accent of how I hear his accent.
When you're writing out his dialogue.
Yeah, I do. I really do. Cause I want it to sound to me like how I think Joe Bob would say something. I want it to be authentic to him as a human being, because I really do believe he exists in some part of my mind.
Right. Right.
He's real to me in a lot of ways.
My favorite
I honestly Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, my favorite Joe Bob scene isn't even a scene that is, him. Okay, because some people could say the scene where he comes up to the car and dude blows his head off,
Yeah.
Right. Or some of because Joe Bob's in a lot of scenes. My favorite scene with him is the simple one where he's sitting down eating with his wife, and he doesn't feel good, and she's like and he's like, I just feel like something bad's coming, and she's like, indigestion. He goes, I just worry, and she's like, you're a good man. You know what I mean? And I was like,
yeah,
that's character building right there. That is awesome. That I love that scene. That made me feel like, oh, and now I really get who Joe Bob is in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, well, I also think Martha is a big part of who he is.
Yeah,
and I definitely, I mean, she's definitely, she's just an important character for him, and for me in writing him, it's almost like sort of Deus Ex Machina, when it's like I don't know how to write him. I'm like, what would Martha say to him at this point? And so you get a little bit more of their relationship in 7 and 8.
Across his radio.
Yeah.
Cell phone.
I'm trying to figure out a way to bring that back in a little bit, but that's one of those hard things, because that was like a fully just like its own story in issue 1.
Right.
Where we were able to explore that. And it's kind of hard to fit it into, when you're building a slightly more complex story in 7 to 12, but it would be fun to sort of explore the origins of the radio. But yeah, I mean, I'm working on issue 13 right now, which was originally, so we always wanted to do a Christmas issue. We wanted to do one back in 2020, and it was always going to be a one shot, and it was originally going to be this one thing, and it was going to be, it would have taken place in current day. And then I decided on doing a different thing that would introduce a villain who's coming later, and then, which is involved with the West Texas Above Ground Pool King. And I sort of reread that, and it just didn't feel like it felt like a full issue. So I was like, all right, I don't want to do that. So I finally landed on, Christmas, ghost story, the classic thing.
Yeah.
And also we end the arc well. I think we ended really well, but I still feel like it would be nice because we're going to take another break after December. Sure. I thought it'd be kind of fun to do an epilogue almost, where it's a Christmas story. It's set in 1981.
Yeah.
So, so we get to explore, because we don't really see Martha too much in 1981. We see a glimpse of her. She's there, but we don't really see her.
Right.
So I wanted to definitely have her in this story a little bit more.
Is Martha a looker in 1981?
Yeah, she was. Yeah, so yeah, her and Lou, both of them.
She's got sass. I love Martha. She's good.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I wanted to do a story with her as well. Her occupation, she's retired now in 2021. But her occupation she was a, like, what would you call it? A correctional facility counselor. Okay. So that was her job. And she's retired now, but I had this whole arc set up where I was going to have her called in to, one of the old inmates that, she's the only one that he'll talk to. Right. So they call her back in. I don't know if we're going to get to that at any point. We might, I feel like we might do spinoffs or something, but like, I feel like I've been saying that Texas Blood is 30 issues, and I kind of like the idea of 30 issues, but We'll see where things go. But
30 issues of Texas Blood, and then if you have other things, they don't have to call it Texas Blood. It could be just happens to be county.
So here's the thing: is that you could always do Ambrose County stories or something like that. But there's a mention in the back matter in issue 7 about this 1870s Western gang called the Enfield Gang, and Jacob messages me and goes, "Are we going to see any more of these guys?" And I'm like, maybe in a spinoff or something like that. And so we actually discussed that. I think the idea right now, I don't want to get anybody's hopes up if we don't end up doing it, but the idea would be after the 3rd arc. So after the 3rd volume, we might do that.
Do something like that.
Which was actually a recommendation from Sean Phillips, Jacob's father, that we get 3 volumes in and then we could mess around, because then we're more established in that way. Because I felt like with 7, right before 7 came out, I was like, are people gonna just reject us? Right. Luckily they didn't. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of building in our just creation of this county, that we're introducing characters and places that we're not necessarily exploring in that arc or in that story that we can play with later. But like we were talking about with Joe Bob, where I have his whole life planned out. I also have Martha's life, and I know where they met, and we mentioned it in issue 7. They met in Dallas and at school, Right. And the first movie they went to go see together is Planet of the Apes. It's like that's the kind of stuff that I love, and that really kind of makes a character real for me.
Right. Yeah. Because you have actual memories for them to draw upon, which is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're giving them a full life.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people don't think about that stuff. And when you read certain books, and we won't mention names or anything like that, but when you do read certain books, you can kind of tell. You're like, oh, he just made this weird decision that's completely out of character compared to what you had before,
Yeah.
And it just kind of, I don't know, when they don't do that when you don't do that world building and that unseen fulfillment of the character, I think it comes across, and I think it comes across with good stories when you do that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, for this story in particular, for what we're telling about Ambrose County, I mean, a lot of these stories were not connected originally, but I had various stories that were all set in Texas. For some reason, I was very attracted to writing about Texas early on. And so I had a story that was called Shaman, which is a story that we'll see later on. That's going to be like the second to last arc in Texas. Oh. And there's another story that was literally called Texas Blood. So, and that was the 2nd through 6th. And then, obviously Eversaw kind of came in, and, but I have all these like different ideas, and it just sort of, when I decided to put them all into one county, it all just became this huge history.
Right.
Yeah, it really helped in terms of that, just like having Joe Bob be sort of our central figure that we follow throughout, even if he's not the main character, like in 2 through 6. Randy's the main character, but Joe Bob's there in every issue,
right, in
some small way.
Right. He's I feel like he's the glue.
Yeah, I like that he's just sort of there being like, Randy, and
I think he picked up Randy up, took him to the police station, and just kind of was very much that father figure for him.
Yeah.
And it speaks to who Joe Bob is. Like, hey, this stuff is happening, but I know your character, I know who you are. You might want to just kind of calm down and take a breath and don't do anything brash. That's how I took that whole thing.
Well, I mean, it's such a small community, which is one thing, but he's known these people since they were young. Yeah. And so he knows that they can be bad, but he also knows that, what's in their heart. And a lot of times, what's in somebody's heart is good, even if they're making bad decisions. I know plenty of people who were in a very dark place in their life. I never got to the point where I needed to go to rehab, but, I've known people who did have to go to rehab, and, and there were certain people that cut them off. Yeah. There was other people that I know who wound up, making bad decisions and going to jail, and there was again, certain friends of theirs that wind up cutting them off because they're like, what's the point? They keep making these bad decisions.
Right.
But I feel like Joe Bob is that person that will take you out to coffee and like ask you how you're doing,
Yeah. That's
find out, how you are, and because he knows that you're a human being and you matter, and even if you make the wrong decisions, you're you're a human.
Well, I'm excited to read the rest of these as they come, and I really applaud for what you and Jacob have done. You guys have put it together a wonderful book. I really telling everybody I highly recommend going out, and if you can't afford it, go to your local library. They probably have it because mine did. But I would suggest getting all the series that you can from your local comic book store, or get the trade paperback for Arc 1 because it's amazing. And then catch up.
And it's also only $10. The image is amazing at having a very affordable first trade. So $10. Most of their trades are $10.
Yeah. There you go. But you're gonna have a lot of fun. I'm telling you right now. I don't know where Chris is at, but if you were a fan of the Coen brothers, if you've seen Lone Star, that's one of my favorite movies from the 90s. It really is. It's because it's like not a real well-known movie, but it's done super well. You are a modern Western fan. I think this book is going to be for you in a lot of ways. Chris, we've been on for an hour already. Can you believe it?
I can't. No, it's been a great conversation. I've been having a great time.
That's good.
Did you record it? No.
Oh, shit. Can we start over? No. It's so funny because I go through and I try to read what I can, right? From who's ever coming on, if somebody like you. And then I always try to find interviews that they've done, because I don't like asking the same questions that you answered over and over and over again, because that's boring. You can go back and watch those other interviews if you want to know the things. So I try to do that. Yeah. I'm glad that you had a good time, because that means a lot to me.
Yeah, I think this is the most in-depth I've gotten about Joe Bob in particular. Really? I don't think that I've really delved into him that heavily in any other interview or any other podcast. So.
Yeah. Well, it was really obvious that Joe Bob is probably your favorite character that you've been writing.
I hate writing new things, by the way, because he's not in them.
Yeah.
I'm like, when am I going to find that other character who's going to speak to me the way Joe Bob does?
Yeah. I love the name too, Joe Bob. Just,
Yeah. Well, that came from a real person. That was, I know a guy in West Texas, Marfa, Texas. If you're not familiar, there's the Marfa lights, which dance in the night sky. But it's this desolate, area in West Texas, and there's a real guy named Joe, and his name is Joe Bob.
That's awesome.
And so he gave me the Wells as well.
Yeah.
That came from him and his family, and so that he sort of lent me those things, and I thank him forever for them. I've immortalized him in this comic book.
I love Martha giving him shit through the whole book about his wells. Well, well, of course. Well,
yeah, we had a shirt made up too that was Joe Bob looking in a well.
Is that something people can order?
Yeah. It's on our Big Cartel site. I think it's Texas Blood, that Texas Blood, Big Cartel, or Big Cartel, that Texas Blood.
Oh, I'll look for it and I'll put it on the show notes, because that's hilarious. People need to get
cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking your time and coming out and hanging out and talking that Texas Blood. When your next arc is done, you should come back and we should have a whole new conversation about all the new characters and everything going on.
Sure.
I don't know if you're interested. One of the things that we do from time to time is we do a DVD commentary style track for comic books, where we use an issue and then we literally read the issue with the writer and or artist or both, and we talk about each page and why this happened, and you know what I mean, kind of, so that way somebody can go along with their book and kind of get that commentary track.
That would be great. I mean, we could try to get Jacob on for that too.
Yeah,
it's a little tougher because he's obviously in the UK, so it's time difference, but it's doable. We've done it before. But I mean, I grew up with commentary tracks. That's how I became a film buff. Really, it was just that I remember, I would walk. I didn't have a car, obviously. I would walk on the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
to the Menlo Park Mall, which is like the big mall here where I grew up. And I would go into the Menlo Park Mall. I'd go to the Suncoast and I would buy a DVD or a couple of DVDs, whatever I had enough money to get. I worked at a music wholesaler and he paid me cash. And I would take that cash and I would walk to the Suncoast. I'd buy a bunch of DVDs. I would go back. I would watch them. Then I would listen to commentary tracks. And when the director or the writer would talk about what his influences were, I would go out then the next time I went and I would find those movies. And that was how I became a film lover, really. I mean, I was always a film lover, but that was really how I became a, film buff, yeah, you're cinephile, as I say.
That you might not know otherwise,
Yeah. So, I mean, but point is, I would love to, that would be fantastic.
In a roundabout way, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, I really appreciate it, and shit, man, we'll chat soon.
All right, man. Cool. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Spaghetti! And we're back.
That's right. We are back. Back in the saddle again. Well, I hope you guys really, really enjoyed that as much as we did making it for you. And if you like what you heard and you want to hear more, you got to go check out spoilerverse.com, because at spoilerverse.com we have a plethora amazing directors and artists of all walks of life, and editors and writers, and oh my god, are you a lover of comic books like we are? Then there's so many amazing people from the comic book world over at spoilerverse.com, and I highly implore you to go there and check it out.
Yeah, and while you're there, you can check out all the other podcasts on our network, like Bridges and Geekdoms and Funny Book Forensics and Haphazard Adventures and Nerds from the Crypt and so many more.
Misery Point
episodes
Radio.
all the time. Go check all of them out, and check out all of the reviews and previews and articles we have going up every single day for you, every day on spoilerverse.com for you to check out and to read and to love and to like and to comment. We have a store link. If you want to help support the site, you can do it two ways. One, go to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/spoilercountry, or go to our store link in the middle of the site there and get a t-shirt, a face mask, a hoodie, something, look fly as hell, and help support the site when you do that, because we get $1 or $2. And, maybe you want to talk to us. If you do, you can do it obviously on all the socials, but if you go to scpod.us/discord, you can join our public Discord server and come chat with us all day long.
I couldn't say it better myself, dude.
There you go.
You just mouthed out a ton of information at once, and really I hope you guys enjoy what you're hearing, because we're working our butts off to bring it to you.
We are.
I guess there's only one left thing. Yeah, I'm gonna go with it. There's only one left thing left to do.
What's that?
In an oceans of podcasts,
We are Cthulhu.
as Cthulhu compels you to
Spaghetti! Open the mind.
and read more.
Spaghetti!